Toby, thanks very much for asking me to be a part of this. It should be a lot of fun. My name is Tom Salinksy. I'm a writer, podcaster, corporate coach, and I've picked as my story The Time Warrior, a story I think is the perfect story to show a new Who fan who's never seen the classic series before. It's the first story for Sarah Jane Smith. We get to see the Doctor through her eyes. It's the first story featuring the Sontarans. It's the first pseudo-historical, something which is a big feature of the new series, celebrity historicals, but we hadn't seen them in the show before. I think it is a great story. It's one of my favourites. I fell in love with it the very first time I saw it. I'm going to be watching the as broadcast version on the DVD. There's a version with spiffed up special effects. That probably is the version I would show this mythical new fan. But the last time I watched that version. So today I'm going to watch the broadcast version instead, which I suspect is what you're going to do. So none of the things I've said are going to be my favourite things. I haven't decided what these are yet. I haven't watched the show again. So sit back and relax. Enjoy, with me, The Time Warrior.
Well, welcome back. A bit of time has passed between episode 3 and 4. In Doctor Who terms, a week. In my terms, a lifetime, beginning of one. But in today's terms, for me, saying hello to you, since episode 3, which I recorded on my birthday, 3 weeks have passed. I haven't watched any Doctor Who for a happy times and places. I took a bit of time off. So I do hope I don't repeat myself, because I can't remember what I said in the previous episodes. Let's see what happens, shall we? Welcome, nice to see you. I hope you have lined up your part 4 of The Time Warrior, marvellous Doctor Who story, which we're going to watch in 3, 2, 1, go. And a dramatic pause, and there we go. Oh, it's nice to be back. I just had a bit of a rest, and I was planning to do this earlier. Look, regular viewers, if you're watching the video, audio people, you're going to have to imagine it. Let your imaginations work. I haven't lost remote control because I've tied it to the Blu-ray player. But then I spent ages because I'm recording on an Apple product, and of course Apple products are all compatible, except when they bring a new one out, it all has different ports to plug in. You need all sorts of different adapters to make the old cables work with the new thing, which I think, is an executable offence, and will be when I rule the universe. Look at that costume. I love the cliffhanger. You actually see his face go red. There's a slight pause to give Sarah time to get there, but it works. It works. The Doctor is hit. That costume is great. A scientist in his pyjamas collapses to the floor. Never mind your Yeti on the Lewin tooting Beck, which is what John Pertwee always used to advocate as the ideal Doctor Who thing, an incongruous thing in a familiar setting. Well, the incongruity here is a familiar thing, the man in his pyjamas, and he's in a medieval castle surrounded by technical bump. And then we get a close-up of Linx with his hairy eyebrows, a very malleable face. I love this. I think it's a really quality production with a brilliant performance inside a superb mask. And then the batty old Professor Rubish gets his moment. Just see the Sontarans have a probic vent. I bet on Sontar, when they bring out their new charging equipment, they don't bring it out with a different jack to stick in the back, and they have to get an adapter, otherwise they won't work. Because that would be ridiculous, wouldn't it? And that would belie the idea of convenience, which is what all this is supposed to be about. Don't even get me started on the doors here. They're modern doors, so they have 3 locks, so that means 3 times more likely to break. Anyway, they've already got a nice little bond, these two. I think also when I do these, I'm in serious danger, because it's my tendency to sort of mine for arcana. I tend to always overlook the obvious. So I've yet to nominate Robert Holmes as my favourite thing, or the person playing the Doctor, or the companion. And you'd think Sarah Jane would get a look in here, because it's her first story, and it's a confident debut. But I think Sarah has better moments that I might keep in store for future episodes. And I've also got to be careful that I don't just pick characters or actors, but I've said that a million times. Look, I don't know if you're watching. We've got a bit of disco lighting going on here because I put on the disco lights. We've got a disco light because I live with a very strange woman. There's a lovely sort of look of slight fear and immense stupidity from John J. Carney as Blood Axe. But doesn't he go, I'm busy? And you go, no, that's obviously John Pertwee. That's a busy is a very John Pertwee word. Yes, I've probably mentioned at the end of last week, this is the first episode of Doctor Who transmitted in my lifetime. I was born between episodes 3 and 4 of The Time Warrior. And I liked this story before I knew that. I actually looked it up relatively late in the day. I wasn't sure. I didn't really care, interestingly. So it's something I had to actively sort of dig to find out because I'm not great on dates. I think I patted myself on the back and went, Doctor Who started the day after John F. Kennedy was assassinated, you know. That's as far as it goes. And even now, if you said to me, what year was that story? I'd have to rack my brains, and provided it wasn't, you know, for money or, you know, or in the unlikely event it would crack a security code on a spaceship that's about to crash into the sun. Like that would be a thing you'd do. I'd probably get there, but it would take me a while. Now, there was always a thing about... Remember there was a thing in Matrix Databank in Doctor Who magazine about anachronistic potatoes. And then when Doctor Who was, you know, given proper scholastic observation, it was revealed that actually the anachronistic potatoes are very hard to discern. So we can strike that off the goofs list, everybody. So the Doctor actually fits in the costume better than the robot itself did because, see, it had to have its head chopped off. It's I think it's probably the least successful aspect of the story, the android, and it's a bit of fun, but it's and you can sort of see you can see the Doctor's face beneath the mask, but that's all right. It's the sort of thing the Doctor needs to do to get out of trouble. Disguise himself as a robot. It's his sort of ingenuity and thinking outside of the box. But it's certainly not going to be my pick of the things. I've been thinking about this as well because I've picked cliffhangers twice. I've picked Iron Gron and Blood Axe, and I've got to pick 2 things for this. Tom Salinsky's response is all fired up, and bless him, I've noticed he's also recorded a shorter introduction because on the later episodes I don't have the full introduction to the person. I usually cut it down, and he's provided me with that. So aren't people good? I'm really love the way that people have kindly responded to this piece of frippery that I'm doing that I hope is entertaining. Good old sword fight. Of course, a sword fight now is a much easier thing to do with, you know, editing but I suppose, you know, all of these actors were well versed in stage fighting, but I'm not sure there've been many really, really good sword fights in Doctor Who because they all have to be done in one take with a multi-camera setup. Now, one of these kitchen wenches is Bella Emberg, better known as Blunder Woman in Russ Abbott. So when I was growing up, she was very much a TV mainstay. So the idea that she would have an uncredited cameo appearance in Doctor Who was very exciting, you know, because one always wanted to get validation for a programme that was that had a bad reputation, was want to have the mickey taken out of it by her mates by saying, yeah, but it's associated with this thing that we know. I mean, not that, you know, citing Russ Abbott's Madhouse would necessarily be the conduit to artistic affirmation that you'd require. But I like the idea that a part of popular culture, and she was great. Bella Emberg, she was a great sort of comedy stooge. She's also been an extra in Doctor Who and the Silurians. But to prove that if you stick with showbiz long enough, I love the look on David Dacre's face when he takes the mask off the Doctor. Bella Emberg eventually gets a credited role, a couple of lines in Love and Monsters, and I think is edited out of The Runaway Bride, but I'm not sure we've ever seen that scene. So actually, it goes. Yes, supporting role barely seen, no credit in the classic series. Finally comes good with a lovely cameo in Love and Monsters. You go, brilliant! Bella Emberg is now part of the official Doctor Who tapestry. Come back, Bella! And then gets edited out of her final appearance. She's no longer with us now, bless her. Yeah, she's the one in the background there. So that's showbiz, guys. I've had friends who've been. Well, I think anyone that's ever done a telly goes, oh, that bit that I put a lot of hard work into, the camera was looking somewhere else, or they've cut it. I once did an episode of Coronation Street where the part I auditioned for was reasonable. And then when I got there, one of the other actors said, should we read through the scene? And I went, yeah. And they said a line, and I went, oh no, I've got a bit more than that. And they went, oh no, we've had some cuts. This is where the scene starts. The scene started with me leaving. And nobody told me. That's showbiz. But I've had a mate who's turned up to a movie premiere with a girl of a movie that he was in, all the flashbacks and all the dream sequences. And when he introduced the girl to the director, this is a date. This is my mate, the director of this movie, what I was in. And the director went white and went, did nobody tell you? The dream sequences and the flashbacks had all been cut. But my friend has had a great career. It's just one of those old pitfalls. Good old Sarah. She's plucky, isn't she? And that's a difficult ask to pull off that distraction trick. But they pulled it off. And one of these extras here is George Ballantyne, who was a sort of perennial fixture. I think Peter Davison talks about him in one of the DVDs. He was a sort of perennial fixture at the BBC. Often wore sort of round spectacles and was a sort of genial character actor-y type. There he is. He's the one at the control panel nearest us when Ruby stuck down. But he finally gets a couple of lines in Snake Dance and a credit. So again, George Ballantyne, who is in loads of Doctor Who's behind the scenes, he comes good in Snake Dance as the hawker trying to sell a toy snake to Tegan near the end of episode 1. I do like poor old Linx, trussed up there, but he still has a bit of dignity about him. And I look at that mask. That John Friedlander, I don't think I have credited, deserves an enormous amount of... And interesting, because he was a sort of name very much associated with Doctor Who. He did the Davros mask and that sort of thing. And I think he was the sort of helped pioneer the half mask idea, where you still got the performance, but you also got the alien features. And latterly, he's not been interviewed or seen. I never knew how to get in touch with him. And he's somebody I would add to the list of sort of unsung heroes of Doctor Who that I think deserves perhaps a bit of better coverage. That latterly, we sort of miss. Is he on? He might be on a couple of the DVDs, but not enough. And I presume either because he couldn't do it, or was poorly, or didn't want to, or whatever. But there was certainly no ill disposition, as far as I'm aware. The story is treading water a little here, but but it doesn't really matter, because Iron Gron is enjoying Doctor Who, and John Pertwee is all that brilliant stuff of sort of keeping his cool while these idiots are shooting at him with weapons out of their time. John Pertwee's Doctor keeps his dignity and remains slightly sarcastic. But remember, there's a lot more in this than I'd imagined. Get some good face pulling there. I think in my head she was just, in a couple of shots in the background, but she got a reasonable slice of the action there. One she got in The Runaway Bride. But because of course this is the beginning of the Sontarans. I can't remember if I finished the story about that book I got of Giles Brandreth's. I know I went down the path of wanting Alan Bromley to be my name, but the main reason I mention that is because the picture of Elizabeth Sladen in this costume in that Doctor Who magazine was a brilliant sort of half-page picture of her, and she absolutely stole my heart, and I fell in love with her. And in that book, and it said, "Who would you like to marry?" I put Elizabeth Sladen. I think I may have said this in an earlier episode, and my sister said to my brother, I think, "Who's Elizabeth Sladen?" He said, "Sarah Jane Smith," and I did not hear the end of it. And the shame, what's the shame in being in love with Sarah Jane Smith? Absolutely none. And you know what? I'm still a bit in love with Sarah Jane Smith. Oh, there's Steve Brunswick again. He's not been fired for his acting. But of course, because he doesn't have a line in this, because he was a sort of promoted extra, he gets no credit this week. And is that Andy Abraham? Must be Andy Abrahams again. It's not very clear on the film. Who actually, I don't think I mentioned that Andy, as well as being a bit like Arthur Cox and a bit of a genial sort of fellow, was a wizard at crosswords, and a bit of a one with the ladies, I have to say. Which, seeing as he's got about, well, he's got 40 years on me, because he was guarding Arnsron's castle as I was brought into this world. Good work, Andy. And again, another, an extra that went on to have a good acting career. Andy has yet to crop up in Doctor Who again, but I hope he does. June Brown. When I lent her the Time Warrior, I also did a tape of some of her other stuff. She's in the banned episode of Doomwatch, which is called Sex and Violence, which is all about TV censorship, and it's largely people sitting around a table, but it comes to some very intelligent conclusions. And she's a sort of Mary Whitehouse type figure, and it's it doesn't shirk on showing the reactionary side of that sort of Puritanism. It's very interesting. Doomwatch is a series I must do again. And if you've not seen Doomwatch, it's very, very interesting. It's very good for spotting Doctor Who actors. And occasionally people say bastard, which is very exciting. Oh no, I think I misidentified George Ballantyne. George Ballantyne's the one in the Cardigan. Yeah, Rubish has a good old time of this and ascends up the credits this week. Yeah. And the Sontaran spaceship, I like the fact the Sontaran spaceship has always stayed the same. Yes, and that's what I was going to say. I like the fact the Doctor has this sort of fan thing that repels Sontaran shooting. I buy that. That's great. That's the sort of... that's Ray Dunbobbin, who was Ralph in Brookside. So he's an extra that went on to have a great career. I didn't realise he got such a close-up. I think he wrote plays as well, Dunbobbin. He's sadly no longer with us. Nor is lovely Jeremy Bullock. Look at him. What a fabulous... He could have done Robin Hood. He's in Robin of Sherwood as Edward of Wickham. So he looks, Lincoln Green is his thing. And Hal the Archer was always a bit of a sort of dashing hero figure in the book, certainly. And of course, it's him that kills the bad guy. There was I think it was in the Doctor Who magazine Third Doctor Special, where they say it's almost a shame that Linx doesn't go back to war, because actually the story would end the same. The spaceship takes off, the castle blows up. That's kind of it. No, Linx is not really defeated, apart from the fact that Hal runs in at the last minute and has the correct adapter for the slot. And I'm sort of in agreement with that. I haven't really thought of that before. And that magazine, I think it was Gary Russell, planted the seed of that idea that actually it could have been really distinctive, the idea that Commander Linx goes back to war. Because he's such a good character, he sort of deserves that. And they could have brought him back. I suppose, maybe, I wonder if they would have. No, it wouldn't have worked if they brought him back for Sontaran Experiment, because you need Sarah to go, you're the same, and them to go, no, we're clones, so we can be, we can be this cost-saving device that turns out not to be one, because we always do a different mask every time. But I think I'd have been comfortable with the idea of Linx going back to battle, because you actually rather like him. There's no guile to him. He's perfectly honest and straightforward. He doesn't betray Iron Gron. He's slightly contemptuous of him, but he sort of keeps his part of the bargain. And I like the fact that he's amused by Iron Gron, but he also doesn't take any rubbish from him. 100 miles from this, can I be concerned with the fate of primitives? That's the quote in the Doc 2 magazine, Third Doctor Special, because it had a quote from each story above the review. And that's a great image of that brilliant costume, sort of at the head of the table of these, medieval hams. And I mean that in an entirely complimentary way. They're playing the parts exactly as they should, with exactly the level of gusto required. I think that extra who falls asleep does so slightly too suddenly, and then can't quite settle. But of course, because the Sontarans come back, they are now established as regular fixtures in the series, popular monsters, and I think Lindsay deserves some credit. I love the way he stands like that, sort of ready. He's just gone, right, how would my warrior stand ready for action? And it's a thoughtful way of doing an alien thing. I get exactly what that is. That's the way these creatures, prepare themselves for battle. But it's not defensive. It's sort of welcoming. But it's alien. But it's plausible. But it's different. Great. Lovely piece of kit as an actor. And I feel bad that I've chosen 2 cliffhangers involving Linx, and I've also chosen characters, Iron Gron and Blood Axe, and I could choose Rubish easily. And I've sort of, as I say, I've chosen the cliffhangers with Linx, but I can't not choose Linx as one of the things, because I think Kevin Lindsay is utterly brilliant. Donald Pelmy is good. I mean, there's so much. Look, that's a great Terry Walsh, I'm sure, flying through the air and landing on. John Pertwee landing on it back there, but So Iron Gron, of course, Linx has to kill him, I guess. Blood Axe survives, and he's probably a filthy murderer. But and I think the interior of Iron Gron, Linx's spaceship, which you don't see that much of, is well rendered. Keith Cheetham, the designer, it was his only gig on the show. I think he does a decent job. It's a shame you get the just the white outside the castle windows a couple of times. That's a bit of a dead giveaway. But I think generally the design is pretty decent. The castle kind of works. I mean, it looks like a set. It does look, but it's nicely decorated. It's got a bit of space. Very good running from the first extra to go there. He gave it something. Obviously not made by Apple there, Howl's Arrow, but Linx at least gets to take off. But yeah, I would have liked him to go back to war, but I suppose he hit the takeoff button too soon, so actually the spaceship doesn't take off, it blows up. That's a flaw in the design, by the way. But you could have had the spaceship take off and just, absolutely total the castle as it went. Well, I'm wishing upon a star. It didn't happen. Linx is dead. Cut from the castle to some stock footage. I think that's actually pretty well done. I think it's a quarry rock face falling, but I think the cut is enough. And on the DVD, they replace it with some not very good CGI explosions. Sorry, DVD guys. But it's one of those examples, I think, where actually the original was perfectly fine. And I know Barry Letts hadn't been particularly happy. And it's perhaps a sign that sometimes you should ignore the original production team, because I think that was fine. But Barry Letts was perfectly entitled to ask for it as an alternative, which it is on the disc. But I watched the original. That's flown by. I mean, I was a bit, because I dropped the ball on this. I was a bit reluctant. I kept sort of putting it off slightly and going, as I say, I've sort of lost the momentum. Dear Jeremy Bullock, you did, and as I say, I forget some. I might have said everything I've said tonight in the previous 3 episodes. Jeremy Bullock had exquisite handwriting. It was very, yes. So there we go. Linx and Professor Rubish, top of the credits there. I love that story. I think it's the perfect blend. It's very, very funny. When you're a kid, a lot of the stuff that is funny isn't funny. It's just, it's that period drama. It's only as you get older that you go, oh, they've been a little bit arch with this, but we can enjoy that. It's deliberate, slightly hokey, but without being an annoying send-up. And that's the sort of thing that Doctor Who does very well, is that often the Doctor doesn't land in a time period, that the Doctor lands in a sort of genre. And he landed on the planet Cod Medieval there. But that's okay. That's okay, because the actors are good enough that David Dacre gives a very, very funny performance, but it's not a silly performance. It's not stupid. In his own terms, Iron Gron and Blood Axe 2, in their own terms, they are believable within the world that they create for us, and killingly funny, I think, in places, and yet never at the expense of the drama. You never don't think that Iron Gron, silly as he is in places, is capable and willing to kill the Doctor. And that's, I think the judgment there is good. So again, hats off to Alan Bromley, who, as I say, I remember Elizabeth Sladen saying, he wasn't the ideal director for Doctor Who, and there's nothing there that suggests to me that he wasn't. I think he does a really decent. I'm not going to depot anytime soon. I think, as I say, that the story needs a couple of little bits that it could lose, and the robot knight is not the most convincing aspect of it, but I can live with it. I still think it's a 10, if not a 10, a high 9 out of 10. And I very rarely give full points, just because if not a glass half full, a glass is never entirely full. Even if I get a full glass, I've spilt a bit on me, probably on a new suit or a freshly pressed shirt, before I've even sat down, because that's my life. Which began just a few days before the episode we've just watched aired. So, well, look, so I'm going to have to get back to this. Obviously, I've recorded this, in the new year. I don't know how far ahead this will be released. So we're just into lockdown 3. Gosh, by the time you listen to this, you could be in lockdown 4, or who knows? They'll have actually rebooted the whole lockdown franchise, and it'll start again with the lockdown. Or we could all be living in a nirvana where we can go to discos and lick each other's eyeballs and send our children to school. However, what has not changed is what Tom Salinksy recorded for me whenever it was that he sent me this. I've not seen it. This one says part 4 reaction and bonus and plugs, because that's what I ask people to do, is to, for the part 4, is to choose a thing from part 4, a bonus thing, and then to plug their wares. A lot of people haven't been. But Tom, it seems like he will be, and good, because he does much that is worth plugging. My things, I'm going to choose, with an honourable mention to Robert Holmes, who I will pick for some of his stories, and it goes without saying, I think he, of the original series writers, is the one that speaks Doctor Who most fluently. I think he gets the show. He is simpatico with all of the elements that make Doctor Who work. And with an honourable mention to Donald Pelmier, one of Doctor Who's nonagerians, still going as I record this, and I think is probably 92, 93 now. And I do like Professor Rubish, and I've seen him get a couple of bad reviews, and I think they're wrong. I think he's funny, he's dotty, and he pictures it just right. And he's good fun. And he gets the moment where he whacks Linx with the baseball bat. Love that. But I was resisting choosing Linx because he's in Cliffhanger 1, Cliffhanger 3. But they're both such good cliffhangers that it seems unfair, because Linx, the mask is brilliant, the costume is excellent, they both fit very, very snugly, which isn't always the case with the Sontarans. And add to that, I think one of the best, and you've got stiff competition when you come to Michael Wisher as Davros, who is just so good and out of this world. Spoilers ahead for when nobody's chosen Genesis yet, This week, I've been sent videos that I haven't watched, but they're ready to go, for The Dominators and Underworld. And nobody has chosen Genesis of the Daleks. But I think Kevin Lindsay is probably the closest rival in the whole of the classic series to Michael Wisher as the best, man in a monster suit performance, which is a different skill to pull off than giving a performance from not behind a mask. When I say monster suit, I mean covered in latex as well. I think those two are in a different league. They do so much with it, and that's a real skill. That's a real acting skill. So it has to be Linx. He's a brilliant creation, and there's nothing about him that is wrong. From his hairy eyebrows to his sticky out tongue, to his mask within the helmet, to the costume, to his flag, to his translation device, to the performance. Perfect. Brilliant villain. Brilliantly rendered. So my thing for part 4 that stretches across the story is Linx, because it's his last hurrah. Commander Linx going back to war. And did we mention, by the way, that in the book the prologue is written by Robert Holmes, who then gave up, and then Terence Dix writes the rest of it. But Robert Holmes gets a little copyright notice because he wrote the very first bit. And also, Robert Holmes is a scientist. Didn't he submit the storyline as a Sontaran as a missive from a dispatch from Sontaran officer Hol Mess to the Earth-based Terran Cadix, Terence Dix. Just a little bit of effort. I think I probably sometimes put more effort into an email message title than I do into the contents, because get them with the funny title. The rest of it's easy. My thing for the whole thing is, I think, and I'm trying to do things where I don't just go on some specific thing that's in one scene and then miss something that's a glaringly important element of it. I think it has to be the fact that it's an historical with a science fiction element. There was a period where these were referred to as the pseudo-historicals. Since the word since Seward's Corner in Private Eye, I know pseudo is an entirely different word, but I just imagine somebody sitting around being very pretentious about 1066. But they were called pseudo-historicals, where they weren't the pure historicals of largely the Hartnell era. They're the ones which are set in the past but have a science fiction element. And I think the BBC does period drama so well, and Doctor Who does science fiction so wittily. when all the excitement of a sci-fi story is married with the BBC's tendency to do period drama very well, and the actors rising to that occasion and making full virtue of these classically trained actors in these sort of genres that they have great aptitude with. I think the fact that it's a pseudo-historical is a great key to its success. Watch him now choose Robert Holmes and Professor Rubish, who were my 12th and 13th man, respectively. Let's see what Tom says. And he's reacting as he watches it like I am. And I think he's one of the first people to do that, because I think most people have just gone, oh, well, maybe not. I don't know. Stop waffling.
Well, that was a lovely way to spend a couple of hours on a Friday afternoon. It's actually New Year's Day here, so I'm shortly going to sit down and watch Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. But what a pleasure to catch up with this story again. It is just absolutely fantastic. And I'm struggling slightly to pick out something specifically from episode 4, so I'm going to cheat a little bit and say Irongron. I'm slightly disappointed he doesn't get to take down Linx at the end. There's such a lovely push and pull in his character. You know, he runs away and then turns around and blames his troops for his own cowardice. He brags about how he could have taken Linx down to Bloodaxe just after having been physically bested by him. But then he does turn around at the end and say, no, I'm going to have my revenge. And yet he doesn't. And I'm slightly disappointed by that. We don't even know for sure he got out of the castle alive. We can only assume that he did. But David Dacre's performance and Robert Holmes' dialogue together just make an absolutely indelible character. And by picking Irongron as my favourite aspect of episode 4, that frees me up to pick Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith for my bonus favourite. There's a reason why she's such a favourite companion. There's a reason why she's the one companion from the classic series who got brought back, unless you count K9. She just is magnificent. This is a wonderful debut. I believe Elizabeth Sladen did say that she was disappointed that Sarah was never as strong as she was here. And yes, some of the stuff about women's libs seems a little bit dated now, but she makes such an impact. It's so impressive. What a wonderful story this is, and what a pleasure to watch it again.
Well, Sarah Jane Smith, I mean, I've got to remember, of course, that everyone doing this is just doing the one story, whereas I will be doing everything. So I go, well, I will save Sarah Jane for another time. Of course, he's not going to save Sarah Jane for another time, because he's not doing another story. I'm very stupid. I mean, I do miss a trick. I'm never going to win. I sort of have decided, I think, I'm never going to win. But that's all right, because if you never expect to win, when you do, it's a bonus. Both very legitimate choices, although Tom seems to think that missed Irongron not making out of the castle. He dies. He gets shot by Linx, shot dead. But Bloodaxe presumably lives to fight another day. As do Edward of Wessex and Lady Eleanor. June Brown and Alan Rowe playing the sort of almost the most peripheral characters, really. That's usually a sign of a good production. And if Alan Rowe's bottom of the credits, I watched Horror of Fang Rock for pleasure over Christmas, and if when I come to do that as part of this, I don't choose him playing Skinsale, I must be distracted. Anyway, I actually watched some Doctor Who for pleasure, and actually, anyway, doesn't matter. So, look, Tom is a really interesting guy. I really like the way that he embraced that. I think he chose some great choices. He chose a great story, and he got in just in time, because, as I say, another friend wanted to choose the Time Warrior about a week later, and instead has chosen Death to the Daleks. So that's one to look forward to as well, because I've got the video for that. I mix up the release order in order to give a variety of Doctors. So who knows when you'll hear this, but I've given the game away. This was recorded in January 2021. The world is ever changing, and yet also slightly stuck in a groove as well. So who knows what it will be like when these commentaries for this story reach your ears. But I hope, whatever the world is like where you are, it is a happy time and a happy place. And my thanks to Tom Salinksy, and I'm going to let him plug his wares as the way out of this particular instalment. And I'll be back with another story, don't know which one, but it won't be a Pertwee, next time. So join me for that. And over to Tom with sincere thanks to him.
Now, if you're interested in me and the stuff that I do, I run corporate workshops, generally about communications. I write plays and things, including some for Big Finish. And I'm coming to the end of a 3-year plus project with fellow Big Finish writer John Dorney and an actor called Jessica Regan. And we've been working our way through every film that's won Best Picture at the Academy Awards in an order determined by picking them out of a hat at random. So that's called Best Pick. You can hear all the episodes by going to bestpickpod.com or by using your podcast listening tool of choice. And you can hear us talking about lots and lots of films, as well as a few special episodes about people like Orson Welles, Alfred Hitchcock, Stanley Kubrick, and so on. It's been a really fun journey. Probably would have finished by the time you've heard this, but we're going to try and keep it going in some form. Thank you very much, Toby, for asking me to take part in this. It's been a tremendous amount of fun, and I hope this is what you wanted. Cheerio, bye for now.